Today on the We Invested podcast, we have Penelope Jane Smith, the founder and CEO of Real Prosperity Inc. Penelope, how are you doing today?
I am awesome. It's a beautiful sunny day, and like just behind my computer, I got views of the San Pablo Bay and the Green Hills, and I'm just like so thrilled to be here and geek out about money with you.
Man, that's amazing. And before we started recording, I was just telling you that you're probably one of the coolest and most interesting people that I've had on this podcast. So it's a huge honor to get to talk to you and learn more about, what it is that you do and kind of how you think and view things.
Aw, well, words of affirmation are my love language. So now I'm all like, yay.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And before we get started, would you mind letting the people know where they can find you on social media, the internet, and YouTube?
Sure. My main website is realprosperityinc.com. You can read my blogs there. You can get my financial freedom formula ebook for free. And I would definitely also check out my YouTube channel if you like my style and my energy. Just search Penelope Jane Smith on YouTube. And I have a ton of great free financial education on real estate, Bitcoin and crypto, financial planning and retirement. I have a whole financial freedom free e-course on there. So that's probably the best way to take a next step with me.
That's awesome. And I do have to say your energy is amazing, and it's like it's like brightening my day for sure. But let's just start from the beginning and talk a little bit about, where you're from and where did you grow up?
I actually grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area. I was born in San Francisco and raised in a little town in the East Bay called Orinda, which is just a quiet little town in the hills in the East Bay. And today I am joining you from my place in Benicia, California, which is, I think, also considered the East Bay, but it's very beautiful. There's lots of hills and water views and great community, very just like diverse, fun place to be.
That's awesome. And so how did growing up in Orinda kind of impact your outlook on life and success and entrepreneurship?
Wow. Well, I think on the one hand, it was kind of a boring place to grow up. There's not like a lot going on in Orinda, but it was also safe, right? I didn't have to worry about getting mugged or beat up or anything like that. I could kind of, roam about the town. So in that sense, it was a very nice place to grow up. One thing that was a little bit strange was I never really fit in with the other kids at school. Most of the families in that area were pretty wealthy, and we managed to live in Orinda, which was great. But they would like go on these ski vacations and have these fancy cars. And, I just never really fit in, and I didn't have any friends until like fifth grade. One girl moved and I was like, oh, okay, she doesn't know I'm a weirdo. Let me go befriend her quick before someone tells her that I'm too weird to be friends with. That was like when I finally got my first friend. And so I kind of felt like an outcast, and I didn't understand the money thing. I just felt like I was different, and I didn't have the same like resources and experiences as the other kids in the town.
Okay. So how did you begin to understand money? Like, when did that first kind of interaction happen where you understood like, okay, I can really become financially free if I implement these things?
I think I was very entrepreneurial. I was very entrepreneurial as a child. I was always like creating those little projects and businesses. Like I would sell cupcakes to my mom's clients, or I would do a contest for kids at school or something like that. And then over time through the school system, that spirit kind of got squashed out of me. And what I heard over and over and over again was you have to get good grades and get a job and then just go, commute and work somewhere for the next 40 years. And I thought that like, that's what you did. And that's what you had to do. Like, I wasn't aware that there was any other path, which was kind of weird because my mom and dad were both self-employed, but I didn't, it did not compute that I could be self-employed. And when I graduated college, I went off to teach English in Japan because I was like, well, let me go have an international adventure before I, settle down and do this job thing for the next 40 years. So I was teaching English in Japan, trying to figure out like what I wanted to do when I got back to the US. And there was this little bookstore near the train station in Kisarazu that had a few English books. And one of them really popped out at me. It had a purple cover and gold writing, and it said Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And I was like, what is this purple book? And I picked it up and kind of started flipping through it. And I was talking about like the things that rich people teach their kids that the poor middle class people don't. And I kind of surprised myself by buying this. And you got to keep in mind, this is like imported prices. So it was pretty expensive for this book, but I bought it and then I couldn't put it down. And it was like that entrepreneurial spirit from when I was a kid just reawakened. And then from that moment, I learned distinctions about like financial education, passive income. I was like, how come nobody ever talked about, like, I've never heard these words. Like, how come nobody ever told me about this? And so I started going to the English bookstore in Tokyo every chance I got, about 2 hours away on the train, and then bringing back as many books as I could carry on, accounting, real estate, business, math, network marketing, corporations, taxes, like anything related to financial education. And I read and read and read, and I distilled this all down to my next mission in life, which was, if there's other people that don't want to just get a job for the next 40 years, or if I don't want to, I bet there's other people that don't want to. And so I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to learn how to invest in real estate. I'm going to learn how to run businesses. And then I'm going to teach other people how too, because people need to know this, and that was over 20 years ago. And I'm still like just as jacked up about it, if not more so now than I was then. So that was kind of what got me on the journey. I'm like, I'm going to learn how to create financial freedom. I'm going to teach other people how, because freedom is one of my highest values and growth is another one. So the learning and the freedom, it's just how I'm wired.
That's incredible. And before we talk a little bit more about Real Prosperity Inc., I just want to ask you, how was that experience in Japan for you? What did you learn? And how did you just like that transition from America to Japan and just taking that time to, I guess, get to know yourself and see other cool things and experience life?
I loved it. Japan has a very special place in my heart. And in fact, that's where we went for our honeymoon. It's like, where do you want to go? I want to go back to Japan. I went there for 1 year and then I ended up staying for 2 because I was having such a great time. And let's see, a few things like really struck me. One thing I thought was really cool is that you could have this like these super modern buildings, and then there's like this little hundreds of year old Shinto shrine next to them. So there was like this kind of like old ancient part and this like super modern part, and then there's also this like very like industrial city part, and then all these like rice fields and agricultural, and so those dichotomies. And I think part of what I learned there was getting in touch with like the seasons in nature, because they would do things like celebrate cherry blossom season, or we had this guy that took us to go look at the fall leaves. I mean, when was the last time that you organized a trip with friends to go look at the fall leaves? And we went to an onsen, which is one of those like outdoor, like an outdoor hot tub, like a hot spring, right? Mm-hmm. And so we went to a place where we could be in the hot spring and look at the fall leaves, and they have like parties for cherry blossom seasons. And we also went, same guy, we went to his house at like 3 a.m. one morning, and we set up a whole picnic area outside his house so that we could watch the morning glories open as the sun came up. Wow. It's like, I don't know anybody that does that kind of stuff here.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
I think that's one of the areas where I built my skills of like taking complicated concepts and making them easy to understand, because I was teaching people who didn't have like a lot of experience in the English language. And so I would have to start with the most basic word or concept, and then kind of build up the ideas so that they would understand what I was talking about. And I think that has had an impact on me in terms of like why I'm such a great teacher today. And my clients and members are like, okay, when you talk about it, I get it. And I think that started there in Japan.
That's awesome. And do you think it kind of like also helped with, you mentioned communication, but as well as like people skills and just being able to relate to people with different cultures, different backgrounds and things like that?
I think anytime you travel, it helps, and actually one of the things we talked about a lot on the JET program, that was the program that I went there with, was this idea of internationalization, and the idea was that we were going to bring our language and culture to Japan, but it was really stealth transformation, Wesley, because what actually happened was it was all of us that got internationalized, right? Like we all became ambassadors for Japan. Like we all learned Japanese. I mean, not everybody, but I learned Japanese. A lot of people studied Japanese while they were there, and we learned the culture. And then we get to go back and share it. So it definitely gives you an appreciation for another way of doing things, right? And I think anytime you travel or live abroad, that can happen.
That's awesome. So, let's talk a little bit more about your company.
Sure.
What is Real Prosperity Inc?
Well, it's a speaking and training company, and the specialty is supporting women entrepreneurs to become financially free in 5 years or less. And if you want, we could talk about why women entrepreneurs, how we do that. I'm happy to talk about any of that. The reason I called it Real Prosperity Inc. is because I want people to live in true prosperity, which is the experience of feeling grateful for all the abundance that's in your life and looking forward to even more. But like to cultivate that way of living and thinking. Like there's a Unity minister named Eric Butterworth who says, prosperity is a way of living and thinking and not just about money or things. And poverty is also a way of living and thinking and not just the lack of money or things. So I want people to cultivate that way of living and thinking of really deeply enjoying their lives, regardless of how much money they have, and also having money, and then incorporated, not just because it's a corporation, but because I want them to integrate and incorporate those ideas and actually live that fully. So that's the idea behind Real Prosperity Incorporated, which I don't get to talk about much. So thank you for letting me share that.
That's awesome. And so, how did you get started in this industry? What kind of gave you the spark and the vision just to know, like, okay, this is the route that I want to take. These are the people that I want to focus on, women entrepreneurs. This is the market that I want to focus on. How did that all come together?
Yeah. Well, I think that, there's we all have like these multiple decision points or multiple turning points in our lives. So it sparked in me with Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? And then I did a series of personal development trainings where I was flying back and forth to Salt Lake City about every 2 weeks for a year. And at the end of those personal development trainings, I got very clear that like my purpose in this life, in this world, is to support people to become financially free, and to do that through speaking, training, books, courses, stuff like that. So I had that vision. So not only did I want to support people to create financial freedom, but here's how I planned to do that. And here's what I felt like I was put on this earth to do. And then, but I didn't know how to write books or lead seminars or create info products. Like I didn't know how to do any of that, right? And so I got invited to go to this workshop that was actually for holistic practitioners, and I was a full-time real estate investor at the time. But I decided to crash the workshop because I liked their marketing copy, and I'm like, it's always good to learn some marketing things. And so all these people stood up and they were like, I'm a chiropractor, I'm a massage therapist, I'm a coach. And finally, I was the only one who hadn't stood up, and it was really obvious because I was right in the front row. I'm like a sit in the front row kind of person. And the facilitators were like, well, what do you do? And so I stood up in front of this whole room of people and was like, I'm a holistic real estate investor, which is true, actually. I do I've always taken a holistic approach to finances. I had just never thought to label myself that way at the time. And then they shared their ongoing, education programs that they teach people how to lead events and do trainings and create courses. And I was like, holy cow, that's exactly what I want to do, and I had already invested so much money in my education at that time that I had left all my credit cards at home, not signing up for anything. But it was like exactly what I've been asking for. And I felt like the universe just opened up this door that I didn't even know was there. And my vision, which had been so far above me, I had no idea how to reach it, now had this staircase put down in front of it. So all I had to do was take the first step and then the second step and the third step, and then I could actually get there, And so I decided to sign up for their training. And within a few months, I led my first event for, I led my first 2-day event. Before that, I had done one for 10 people, or 9 people, each paying $10. So I made $90 at my first little workshop, but then I really didn't know what to do after that. After I signed up for their program, I did a 2-day event. And can I share what happened?
Yes, please.
So I made $52,000 in 2 days.
What?
And I was like, oh my God, I didn't know people could do that, right?
That's crazy.
That was just bizarre. And here's the thing, not just that amount of money, which is more than some people make an entire year, right?
Right.
But to make that kind of money, living my dream, living my purpose. I was like, holy cow, this is amazing. And that was just the first event. I did a few more. And so like that first year, I made $220,000 in a brand new business around my passion, which was very, very exciting. And actually, just this last weekend before our interview here, I did another event, and this one was an online event. And I made like $370,000 in sales
Wow.
in 3 days. And it's like, of course I did, like
Man.
it's like, it's so cool. So like I've made millions and millions and millions of dollars since with what I learned from that program. So that was definitely one of the best things I ever did. And
Man.
that's how I got on the path. And then you also asked me about why women entrepreneurs. I've always had a special place in my heart for women entrepreneurs. And the more I learn, the more passionate I become. So for one of the reasons I'm so passionate about it is because the traditional financial services industry, like most industries, has a natural gender bias baked in. And so most products and services were designed for men by men, and they don't take into account that women have longer lifespans. We have differences in our career paths. And so statistically, women end up with less money at retirement, but it has to last us longer. And that's really upsetting. And you can see this across lots of industries, like seat belts that are, they're safety tested on the average person, but the average person is the average man. So more women are killed by seat belts than men. I mean, it's like, it's pretty brutal, right? So there's that. And then entrepreneurs specifically, because our income goes up and down, right? So how do you manage cash flow as an entrepreneur whose income changes from month to month? And then how do you strike a balance between investing in your business and investing in assets for the future, right?
Man, so just from talking to you and listening and learning more about your story, it's like two common themes that I hear that are consistently popping up. And the first one is ambition. So it's like you've always been hungry and had that drive. But then the second theme is courage, like the courage to actually do it. So it's like you seek out ways to improve yourself and ways to improve your life and to kind of live out your dreams, but you're also not afraid to do it. Like not being afraid to actually go to Japan by yourself in a whole different country, or not being afraid to go sit front row at a live event and stand up and introduce yourself, and then to actually take in the information and apply it and use it. So that shows like the real difference between just a successful person and then the other side. So where do you think that fearlessness and that ambition and that courage kind of comes from?
Well, it's not so much that I don't feel fear. It's more like, what's the freaking alternative, right? So it makes me think of Braveheart, with William Wallace and him going, freedom, like freedom is important to me, right?
Yeah.
And so what's the alternative? Like, if I'm not willing to educate myself, if I'm not willing to buy assets, like, then what? I'm just going to work at a job until I die because I've never saved or invested any money. Like, and actually the first time I traveled internationally, I went to Europe and I spent my junior abroad in Spain. And Wesley, I was like 99.9% sure I was going to die in a plane crash over the Atlantic. Like I knew it. I couldn't imagine myself being in Spain. And I was like, if I can't imagine myself tomorrow, it means I'm going to die. Like, I don't know why I thought that, but I was sure. I was like, okay, this is it. It's been a nice, 20 years on this planet. Definitely going to die now. But at the same time, I was like, if I don't get on that plane, am I going to like regret that my whole life? Am I going to be that person that doesn't go for their dreams? And I just wasn't willing to live as that person. I'm like, I would rather die in a plane crash over the Atlantic than live my whole life, not going for what I want and not living by my values. Right. So I got on, and I have to tell you, like, when I came up, oh gosh, I haven't thought about this for a while. I might cry. When I came up from the metro into the Plaza de Sol, like the center part of Madrid, and like the sun was shining and I saw the big Tio Pepe sign in the Plaza de Sol, it was like, it was so emotionally impactful. I'm like, oh my God, I'm actually here. Like, I didn't believe it could happen, and it was so cool. And of course, living there was amazing. And I'm still friends with people I met there, 20 years later. And it was an incredible experience. And it also, like, gave me the courage to go and travel to other places. And now I've been to, Peru and Cambodia and Thailand and lived in Japan, and, and I love travel. And I might not have had the courage to do any of that if I hadn't been willing to take that flight. Right.
Exactly. Exactly. So, what I want to ask you now is, just kind of speaking of freedom and being able to do what you want to do, what is passive income and why is it important?
Oh, okay. Thank you. So passive income is income that comes in whether you're working, sleeping, or playing, right? The American Internal Revenue Service defines it as income from trade or business activities in which you do not materially participate. So it could be rental income from real estate, royalties from a book, even just like interest on your savings account, dividends, or even growth from investing in stocks. I still count that as passive income because you can sell them, right? So a lot of examples. One of my first passive income assets other than a savings account was I got one of those little vending machines with peanut M&Ms on one side and M&Ms on the other. And I put it at my fencing club because I used to compete in the Olympic sport of fencing. And I was at my club like 5 days a week training. And I got to figure out like how many M&Ms I would give the other fencers for their 25 cents. And at the end of the day, I figured out I was making a 40% ROI on my little candy machine. It was really cool after giving 10% back, to the junior fencing team. And so lots of examples of passive income, and we can talk more about that. But you asked why it's important. When you have enough passive income coming in, specifically when you have more passive income than expenses, then you are financially free. So financial freedom means different things to different people. For me, financial freedom means your passive income is more than your expenses. So at that point, your assets, your investments are paying for your lifestyle. So you're totally at choice about what you do with your time and energy. So again, it comes down to freedom. And at that point, you don't have to depend on your job or your business or a government or an adult child or a partner or anyone else for money. And you can make choices from a place of freedom and joy instead of debt or obligation or fear. And that's what I'm all about.
That's awesome. And so, it sounds really enticing, to be able to passively earn more than your expenses are for the month. But how can someone become financially free in 5 years or less, in your opinion?
Well, the reason we do 5 years or less is because a lot of the people I work with are, in their 50s, 60s, 70s and up. And so the whole thing of like, well, start investing in your 20s and just let compound interest do its job, which totally works. Love compound interest, right? But when you don't have 30 or 40 years in your runway, you need to figure out something else, right? Or if you've had challenges, like I did start in my 20s, I took $10,000 of my own money, turned it into over $6 million in real estate. I was on track to be able to retire by the time I was 31. And then guess what? The real estate market crashed. I lost everything. I was forced to declare bankruptcy. I had to start all over again, right? So I have people who have like been through divorce or had their business fail or had some kind of medical issue. And when you go through that plan of like, well, you have to just invest for 40 years, it's like, well, I don't have 40 years. This isn't helpful for me, right? So I was like, okay, if I can support people to do it within 5 years or less, that would be really great. And the approach that we developed is a two-prong approach. So there's two kinds of passive income. There's passive income from buying assets, and there's passive income from creating assets. And so first we look at buying assets. This is kind of like the goose that laid the golden eggs, right? So investing in real estate, stocks, bonds, commodities, mutual funds, ETFs, cryptocurrency, businesses, vending machines, whatever it is. But like investing in a thing that's going to then generate more money for you, right? That's the buying assets, you're growing the golden goose. So we work with people on like, how do you grow your golden goose faster? And how do you get your golden goose to give you more golden eggs? Because a lot of people have huge money leaks in their portfolios that they're not even aware of. And if they just make a few little changes, they can get a lot more golden eggs from their goose. And that's going to help them become financially free a lot more quickly. And so when some of the people come into my world and they're able to become financially free in like 4 months, 8 months, it's usually that, like we've just adjusted some things with their golden goose. If that's not enough to get them there, then we bring in the next approach, which is to create assets. And that's where you take your time, energy, creativity, social capital, and you create a new passive income stream with little or no money down. So that could be anything from licensing or royalties from a book, or even like an ongoing membership program that doesn't take much from you to deliver. One of my clients created a formula for like a pet health supplement and partnered with a company to actually go like manufacture and sell it. And they get like $70,000 a month in passive income for having created the formula, right? There's people making tons of money from like fulfillment by Amazon or different types of drop shipping businesses where they're not necessarily managing any inventory. They're just like finding a product that's already selling well, putting their own version in it, like connecting the manufacturer with the marketer and making passive income that way. So those are some examples of, how to create assets. I know another couple that I interviewed started with about $1,000, started investing in mobile homes. And what they would do is buy the mobile homes for cash and then sell them on financing. And obviously when you're willing to finance it and after you fixed it up, you can sell it for a lot more, right? And so starting with $1,000, they were able to become financially free in like 2 years doing that. So does that make sense?
Yes, that sounds amazing. And one thing that I guess the avenue or the prong that I really like from that too is like just being able to create your own assets or your own cash flow by using your time and energy. Because I feel like that's one of the most important assets that we have is our time and our energy and our creativity,
Totally. And it's work, but you know what? So is whatever you're doing right now. So
Exactly.
you may as well work towards something that's going to have your life get easier and easier and easier in the future, right?
So what is a money date and why is that important?
Oh, a money date. A money date is when you create sacred space in your schedule to actually pay attention to your money. And that's where you do things like figure out what is your financial freedom plan and what is your investment strategy and creating your cash flow plan and like actually looking at what your investments are doing, because there's all these things that are super important but don't necessarily feel urgent. And when people are just kind of trying to handle it on the fly, it's not great. But when you have that space, kind of like you'd have date night with your partner, right? You've heard of date night when you're dating somebody or when you're married to somebody. It's like that, but with your money. And when you pay attention to your money, you tend to have more of it. It's kind of like, just like you have relationships with other people, you have a relationship with money. And if you tell someone, you're just not that important to me, I don't want to look at you, I don't want to think about you, I just want to like pay somebody else to deal with you. Like if somebody said that to you, like imagine I said that to my 4-year-old kid. I just want to pay somebody else to deal with you. I don't really want to have to look at you or think about you or interact with you in any way. Right? Like that's horrible to think about. You wouldn't stay in a relationship with somebody that said that.
Right.
But like how many times have you heard people say stuff like that with money? Right? I just have somebody else that does that for me. That would be like saying, okay, I'm just gonna like have this kid and hand it over to somebody to raise until they're 18 for me and not, interact with them at all. And so when I hear people saying like, I don't want to look at it, I don't want to think about it, I don't want to deal with it, it tends to be like challenging for those people to actually hang on to money. So the way I look at it is like, yeah, why would money want to stay with you if you
Right.
don't appreciate it or pay any attention to it? Right. There's also a saying that goes where attention goes, energy flows and results
Yep.
show. It's like when you actually pay attention to your money, you tend to have more of it, you tend to attract more of it, you tend to make better financial decisions. So that's why I recommend having a money date.
So how are making money and growing money two entirely different skill sets?
Well, making money is when you're taking, you're selling your time or creating value or effort. And I mean, you could um do that in things that are going to like create ongoing passive income streams for you, but mostly people are just like trading their time or putting together packages. And it's all about the effort and it's all about your action journey, right? But when you're growing money, instead of you working for money, your money is working for you. And I think, Wesley, you're familiar enough with compound interest that you can see that your money can work much harder for you than you can work for it. I mean, it doesn't have to eat, it doesn't have to sleep, it can just be growing and multiplying 24/7, having babies, and then those babies are having babies, and it's just like growing and multiplying for you, right? Like if you did take $50 a month from the time you're 25 to the time you're 65, and you invested that at 15%, you would have invested $24,000 of your own money, right? That you earned in the make money world, but it would have grown to over 1.1 million. So the majority of that is growth. That's your money going out and working hard for you. And that's the real power of it. So like the hardest thing you're ever going to do is like make some money. And then if you can just get it deployed, give it a job and have it grow for you, you're going to be in really good shape. And sometimes people think that they try to take the make money world rules and apply them to the grow money world. So they think, oh, if I spend 20 hours a week on investing, it's going to do better for me. But that doesn't always work. You know, they get into day trading, and if like they actually track their results, they'd be better off just like kind of sticking it in an S&P 500 fund and leaving it alone, depending on the person, right? But the point is like getting it working hard for you. It's like a totally different skill set. And I know a lot of people that are great at making money, but they don't know how to grow it.
So what are some investment strategies for people who don't want to take away time from their business?
Well, there's a few pretty popular strategies in the big box advisor world. One is the 60-40 split, where you put some of your money in stocks, some of your money in bonds. I don't love that strategy because bonds have been in a bull market for like 35 years. And now it seems like they're kind of starting to break down and not act like the safe haven we've been trained to think they are. But if you wanted to invest in that strategy, you could buy a balanced or blended fund like VBINX. That's not financial advice, it's just an example, that just, does that for you. And you can just buy and hold that, and boom, there's your 60-40 split strategy. Off you go. You can just implement it by yourself with one symbol. Same thing with the buy and hold strategy. That's, you've probably heard of passive investing. That's where you just like kind of buy the whole market. You can buy an S&P 500 index tracking fund and just let it go, And what I like about that is it's totally automated. What I don't like about it is you're not going to leverage the stable uptrends in the market, and you're going to have to expose yourself to those big market crashes, like 50-60%, that can take 5 to 6 years to recover from. But it's very easy, and statistically you're going to outperform the people who are trying to time the market and like get in and out and trade, right? So those are a couple like really, really simple ways. In my programs, we teach a strategy called MPX, which is the market probability strategy. And that's about aligning your money with what's actually happening in the markets. That takes like a little bit more time to look at. You have to be willing to actually look at a price chart every week or two, which, it only takes a second, but you have to remember to do it. So it's not like 100% no thought, passive, set it and forget it like the buy and hold strategy is. But then you don't have to worry about those big dips, and you can leverage the stable uptrends. So it's kind of like if you're driving across the country, the 60-40 split is like saying, you know what, I'm going to drive with one foot on the gas, one foot on the brake. and you can eventually get there that way. The buy and hold strategy is like saying, I'm just going to go the speed limit the whole way. And when I come to a turn, I'm not going to slow down. I'm just going to total my car, and it'll take me a while to recover, but that's okay. I'll still get there faster than with the 60-40 split strategy. And the MPX strategy is more like, hey, when the sky is blue and the roads are dry and the sun's out, we're going to hit the gas and maybe even go a little over the speed limit. And then when we see storm clouds rolling in and curve in the road, we'll start slowing down. And then when the road is clear again, we'll start speeding up again. So it's just different approaches. And one of the things I talk with people a lot about is strategy first and then specific investments second. So I would talk with your financial advisor or your coach, or just be reading books and decide on your own what strategy feels most in alignment with me, and follow a strategy, as opposed to just, I don't know, I think Nvidia sounds good, or or somebody told me this is like a hot crypto that I should get into. A lot of people just kind of like invest randomly and they don't have a clear strategy. So,
and I think that's, definitely a valuable information and great advice. But I know that one question that I wanted to ask you is that, your company, Real Prosperity Inc., has so many different facets to it, from programs to courses to live events to online content creation, ebooks, actually sitting down face to face with clients. Which portion or section of your business is the most energizing for you? Like, is your favorite, I guess?
oh my gosh. I mean, I love all of it, or I wouldn't do it. I mean, like this is my passion business, right?
Mhm.
So I don't believe that you have to spend your precious life energy doing things you hate or don't like. So there might be like moments when I'm like, oh, okay, well, I don't really feel like checking email now. I guess email is the one. Email is probably one thing I'm not as in love with sometimes. Um, but yeah, my overall business model is we do a 3-day event called Financial Freedom 101. And the idea is like in 3 days, you're going to get the tools to become financially free forever. And we do that part as philanthropy because just to give people the financial education that they didn't get at home or in school, right? And like give them that roadmap. And then the other reason we do it is marketing, because some people decide they want to keep working with me over the course of 12 months in my Financial Freedom Accelerator program. So that's a business model that feels really, really, really good to me because I'm creating like tremendous value and enough people end up working with me that we can afford to keep doing the events, right? So I would say that's the core of my business, and that's very exciting to me.
That's awesome. It's something that we talked about, before we started recording is you have a crypto event um coming up in Salt Lake City, and it's on the same panel as Robert Kiyosaki. And I thought it was really interesting, and it was kind of like full circle because you know you first discovered financial freedom through reading and learning about it through Rich Dad Poor Dad. So how was that moment for you? Like, what emotions did you feel when you get this call to be invited to sit on this panel and to just kind of share your thoughts about the topic of cryptocurrency and financial freedom? Like, how was that moment for you?
Well, it's super exciting because I've been teaching for over 20 years. So it's one of those things like, yeah, it took me 20 years to become an overnight success. But it feels very acknowledging of all of the experience and hard work I put in because I have invested over $500,000 in my own education, as well as 20 years of real life experience, right? And sometimes when I see people in these docuseries or interviews or on these panels, I'm like, I should be up there, and now that they're bringing me up as the first woman that they've interviewed about crypto, because it's a very male dominated space. Last I heard, 6% of women in the United States own any kind of crypto. And of course, most of the people who are talking about it and teaching about it are guys. And so they did this whole docu-series on Crypto Revealed, interviewing all men, and they're doing a relaunch. I'm going to be the first woman they interview about it, partially because I'm in the process of launching my own cryptocurrency. And they're like, what? How do you do that?
Right.
But to me, it just feels like, thank you. Thank you for recognizing that we need a woman's voice, you know?
For
So I
sure.
feel, I feel happy and grateful about it and
No,
excited.
that's incredible, man. And I was just saying earlier, it just speaks to the work that you put in and the time that you put in. And that's one of the questions that I want to ask. Um, what would you say is the most important reason for your success?
Well, I see success as the consistent pursuit of a worthy goal, right? Because there's a difference between failure and quitting.
Mhm.
So I've had challenges in my life, like having to recover from the bankruptcy and the real estate crash, right? I could have just said, okay, I'm done, you know, but I kept going. So I think that, human beings learn from making mistakes, and failures are just kind of part of the process. And so what if every mistake or perceived failure was actually like a stepping stone on the path to success? So I think that part of why I'm so successful is because any setbacks are just like part of the process. It's like, okay, well, what do I need to learn from this? I'm still harvesting lessons from the real estate crash that make me a better investor and a better mentor today, right? So I would say that, like if you believe in your dreams and you believe in what you're going for, then you are successful, because any possible setbacks are just building your backstory to make you more relatable, because you are a great success. You're going for it.
Exactly, exactly. So, throughout your 20-year journey, what would you say are some of the lessons that you've learned, just throughout your career?
Oh gosh. Well, one of the biggest things is the importance of cash flow planning, man. Like I did not realize that was a thing. And that was one of the biggest things I wish I had known when I was losing my real estate empire. And, when I say cash flow planning, it's like, it's like a fancy word for budget, but people feel contracted when they hear the word budget.
Mhm.
Cash flow planning, I think, is a better term because it's a plan for the cash that's coming in. And so when I was in the middle of losing everything, I didn't have a clear plan. I did still have some money coming in. And if I had understood cash flow planning, I would have, I might have been able to keep my house. I definitely would have been able to keep the lights on because a collector from Washington Mutual called and made me cry, which a lot of them do. They try to get you to get emotional and give you all their money, right? And I agreed to pay $500 a month on my home equity line. And Wesley, you have to understand how insane this was because I wasn't paying the first mortgage. The house was going to foreclosure, right? Why would I give up $500 on the home equity line for nothing? Meanwhile, my electricity got turned off. Everything in the fridge went bad. I couldn't afford to get it turned on. I couldn't afford to buy new shoes for like a year or two. I had like holes in my shoes, right? There was there was no reason for that. It didn't make any sense. Whereas if I had been following a clear cash flow plan to make sure that my basic human needs were taken care of first, I could have lived to fight another day. And like I said, I might have been able to keep the house. Um, but I didn't know. I didn't know that was a thing. And so I was just like in reaction mode. And it might sound insane, but if you've ever been in financial crisis, it's like your prefrontal cortex, goes offline, your amygdala takes over, and you're just like, I don't know, rah, you're just like trying to survive moment to moment, right? And you can get pretty irrational. And then years later, like I still didn't understand that cash flow planning was a thing. And like I shared, I have an event-based business where most of my revenue comes in from like 3 big events a year. And I have like VIP days and other programs and stuff like that in between. But like I'd get these big influxes of cash. And so I would be like, oh, I made $60,000. Like, where is it? How come I don't have the money for this thing now? And once I learned that cash flow planning was a thing, I was like, oh, this
Yeah.
is a skill that I didn't have. Let me go get it, and figure it out. And so now, like, I can map out my cash flow and do my projections and see, oh, okay, I'm going to be $3,000 short in 5 months and I can do something about it versus like, I'm $3,000 short right now. What do I do? Right. So it's a whole new world. And that's why I teach cash flow planning now. Cause like that was something I wish people had taught me.
I think it's really inspiring and motivating to hear that, you, like you said, you lost your real estate empire, but it didn't intimidate you or discourage you from continuing to invest in trying to rebuild that empire. Was there ever a time where you felt kind of like, okay, I'm done investing, I got burned by one time? Or did you know, like, hey man, this is just a part of the journey, I have to keep going and keep pushing?
Well, when it actually happened, I mean, it was so much worse than anything I could possibly have expected happening to me.
Mhm.
um, that I wasn't like, oh, let me just take this in stride. It's part of the process. I mean, at the time when everything was going down, I was like depressed and anxious and freaking out. And like, I didn't know how I was going to make it work. So I was just like in survival mode for a while, and I had borrowed money from people and partnered on deals with people and like I couldn't pay them back as agreed. And so the only thing I could think was like, well, maybe if I committed suicide, you know, in a way that didn't look like suicide, the life insurance would pay these people back. Like I really didn't have any other idea how to do it. So like that was kind of the place I was in for a while. And what really shifted the mindset and shifted the journey for me was I went to this workshop that I had paid for when I had money. And I was like, they wouldn't give me a refund. And I was like, well, I may as well go because I don't know what I'm going to do, but I need to do something. And I already paid for this. And the facilitator got up and he announced that he wanted to win a Nobel Prize for single handedly turning the economy around. And I was like, wow, that's an interesting idea. And so I shifted the conversation in my head from how can I kill myself in a way that doesn't look like suicide to what could I do to turn the global economy around? And I got a download. Can I share what I came up with?
Yes, please.
Awesome. I noticed that everybody has their own personal economy And that may or may not have to do with the economy at large. So my personal economy was just like tanking, but there were other people who were having their best year in business ever. So I thought if I could support enough individual entrepreneurs to create their own personal economy of abundance, then eventually we would hit a tipping point and that would shift the economy at large. So I started making microloans to women entrepreneurs in Africa and Asia and South America. So we'd have a positive global impact right off the bat. And I started doing workshops for entrepreneurs on like how to get more clients and make more money, because that was something I was really good at. So the focus shifted from feeling bad about myself to how can I help other people? And that's been a really good distinction for me. Like anytime I feel sorry for myself, now I'm like, okay, how can I help other people? I mean, even when COVID hit, I was like, oh, this is bad. Like COVID hit 1 week before my big event. I had just invested thousands of dollars in new AV equipment, and I was getting ready for like, 100,000, 20,000 in revenue to come in. And, you know, everything got shut down. And I was like, holy cow, what am I going to do? And I was like, okay, how can I help people? What do people need right now? So I started doing free financial coaching, and I started doing free classes, and just like, how can I be of service? Let's not even worry about the event right now. Let's not worry about me right now. Let's just show up, because there's a lot of people who need help right now and need inspiration. And I also, I don't know if you saw the Some Good News YouTube show, but I created like my own episode of Some Good News for women entrepreneurs, just to like give people hope about like seeing the good things that were going on. And yeah, so that's been really helpful for me, is like anytime I'm feel sorry for myself or like something's not going my way, I'm like, okay, who can I send an unexpected check to, or who can I help, or who can I support? Shifting the focus from me to helping somebody else really helps.
Man, first of all, thank you for sharing that story with me, and with the listeners. And I want to say, like, that's one of the most important lessons and one of the most important state of mind things that's been said on this podcast. And I think that's the key to like finding real happiness and real peace is like helping others. But like you said, we can get very caught up in our own world, like in our own situation, and feel like, man, it's over for me right now. But then when you just kind of shift that mindset, like you said, it's crazy that you mentioned that, because my parents are like that. Like when I get too down on myself or about something, I'm like in my own world, they'll tell me like, man, go help somebody else, you tripping,
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, because I haven't gone through anything like that, like as far as like you said, like financial ruin and kind of losing everything that you've built. So I don't know, I couldn't even imagine, what it feels like or what that's like, but I know it must hurt and be kind of painful to work so hard to build something and then to lose it all.
Mm-hmm.
But just to be able to recover from that, bounce back, help others, make thousands of dollars in a 3-day span, hundreds of thousands of dollars in a 3-day span, is it's an incredible story for sure, and very, very inspiring.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you for creating a safe space for me to be able to share like some pretty dark and vulnerable stuff.
Yeah, thank you. And I guess my next question would be, how would you like for people to remember you and your company?
Oh, well, I was scrolling around on Facebook, and I saw this meme that just like stopped me in my tracks. And I was like, that is it. And it said, do something today that your future self will thank you for. And I'm like, oh my God. So I love to like share that on my webinars and at my events, because it's like, yeah, anything you can do to set your future self up for success, I think is just really great. And so I think like if you could take one thing away from my company or anything I've shared, it's like, yeah, we're dealing with whatever we're dealing with today, but we are all like our own ancestors, and we're all our own heirs, if you will. So it's like, what's the legacy you want to leave for yourself as well as for anyone that comes after you? I think it's important to think about that.
What does the future of Real Prosperity Inc. look like to you?
Hmm. Well, I see us growing a little bit more with the programs that we're doing. My vision is to have 100 people per year in the Financial Freedom Accelerator, and we're getting pretty close to that. And I also have I don't know if you do this, but I also have baby number 2 on the way. So I'm going to be, kind of doing that, balancing my family and business kind of thing, but I feel up for it. So I see the current model growing a little bit more. And then at some point, I want to launch Prosperity Adventures, where we are going on learning vacations around the world, like to Peru or to Spain or Japan or Thailand or whatever, where it's like 90% just like awesome vacation, but 10% workshop around a specific topic. And that 10% makes it not only an awesome vacation, but like a life-changing, profound experience. I'm a long-term relationships person. So a lot of my clients will re-up year after year after year after year. People have been with me since I first launched my business. It's pretty amazing. And I'd make it very attractive for them to do that because I want to stay in community. And then ultimately, I want us to go travel the world together. So that's what I see for the future when the kiddos are a little bit older and things are a little bit more open post-COVID.
That's awesome, man. Congrats on kid number 2.
Thank you.
Penelope, thank you so much for your time today, man. I really learned a lot, and I mean it when I said it. This is my favorite episode that I've done so far.
Wow.
Yeah, but before I let you go, at the end of every podcast, we like to play a rapid fire question game where I ask you 3 questions. So if you're willing to play, I'll go ahead and get started.
All right, let's do it.
Question number 1: where's your favorite place to travel?
Well, I love Spain and Japan, so outside of the US, Spain and Japan are really, really high up there. And in the United States, one of my favorite places is a place called Sea Ranch that's like up the peninsula along the California coast. It just has a really good energy, and I love being up there in Sea Ranch. And there's a town next to it called Gualala.
Question number 2: what song represents your life the most?
Firework by Katy Perry. Like it's all about like, these, there's different challenges you face in life. And if you're just willing to like be in that passion and ignite your spark, and that really resonates with me. And I just get chills when I hear that song.
Great song choice. And look, final question: what's an amazing thing that you did that no one was around to see?
Well, see, I tend to brag about the amazing things I did. So I'm not sure. I mean, like no one was necessarily around to see me, you know, um, like as these registrations are coming in from the event just now, we just doubled our average sales from this last event,
Wow.
which is really, really cool. And I was sharing with my team in Slack, oh, we got a new member, we got a new member, we got a new member. But like I was the one seeing the orders coming in. So I guess I could kind of say about that. But a lot of times, I believe in celebrating success. So like when something good happens, I want to share it and celebrate it and be excited about it, because I want to like magnetize more of that into my life, and I want to magnetize it more into the lives of the people I'm celebrating with as well.
That's incredible. Penelope, thank you so much for your time today. I've enjoyed talking with you and learning from you. And I can't wait to see what the future holds for you. I really enjoyed this interview.
Thank you. It was awesome.